Welcome everybody that's joined us to 5 tips for building higher levels of employee engagement in 2023. I am from WorkBuzz. My name is Melisande Foster. I'm responsible for our customer experience and customer success here at WorkBuzz, and I'm absolutely delighted to be hosting this panel with 2 of my favourite clients. Don't tell everybody else, though. You can't always say that, but I do love working with these brands in particular and these lovely ladies that I have joining me on the panel today. One thing that I should mention, I'm sure some of you have signed up for this webinar, knowing that Helen from Schroders Personal Wealth was also going to join us. Unfortunately, she can't join us today, but we have a lot to cover, and there's a lot of chat that I've already had with Dorothy and Karen, so I'm pretty confident you'll still be able to get lots of information out of us about how to build those higher engagement levels. Okay, I think we've got some raised hands. Okay, from Vicky, I think a couple of raised hands. If we can ask marketing to maybe pick those up. What I'm just going to do is talk through the learning outcomes of this webinar. So today what we're going to talk through is about things that have been really commonplace in cross-employee engagement. So things like adapting to external pressures in the market, how you communicate across hybrid working environments, and especially with these 2 workforces, I'll let them talk a bit more, but they have quite diverse workforces that take a lot of effort to communicate with and have found varying degrees of success with different channels. We'll talk about how to tackle recruitment and retention challenges and utilise employee engagement to improve your efforts there, how to build employee listening through regular feedback and ensure that continuous listening cycle exists, and how to create moments that matter. So we like to talk at WorkBuzz about these moments that matter through your whole employee experience and your life cycle of an organisation, because there are certain moments in time that will make your employer really stand out, or you feel exceptionally valued as an employee, and those are the things that we're really trying to harness and double down on at WorkBuzz. So I'm really excited to bring to life some of that with my panel. Okay, but in the meantime, I'll stop sharing the slides and bring you back so you can see my lovely panelists' faces. I think there was a raised hand, but I believe that's gone and answered. Okay, wonderful. Rachel picking up with Dorothy. I think you can probably have a lovely drink after. This is a panel and we are open for questions. I have a preset of questions for Karen and Dorothy, but if you'd like to ask any of your own, please do. We have a Q&A function here in Zoom, so utilise that. What we will make more time for questions towards the end of the session, and we'll go through some of the questions that we've already put in front of Karen and Dorothy first. Before we get too far into this webinar, what would be very wise to do is to introduce my panelists. So you've heard enough about me, and I'm part of WorkBuzz and the employee engagement listening platform. And first of all, what I'd like to do is ask Dorothy to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. It's lovely to talk to you, but I can't see anybody, which is a bit freaking me out, but hey. My name's Dorothy Stubbs. I'm the people director at a company called Continuum Attractions. We run visitor attractions right through the country, well, right through the UK, from the real Mary King's Close up in Edinburgh to the iconic Spinnaker Tower down in Portsmouth, and include things like York's Chocolate Story, Coronation Street tours, Emmerdale Village tours. We recently, within the last 3 weeks, have just bought a new business up in Loch Ness, so we will be looking for Nessie up in Loch Ness. We're just refurbishing it, and then we'll open it sort of early spring. Who am I? I have worked in HR for, gosh, I was going to tell a fib and say the last 5 years, but now that Rachel knows me, I've got to tell the truth, eh? So for the last 35 years, I've worked in HR. Started my career many years ago with the Burton Group in Debenhams, but then very quickly moved into hospitality with, as Rachel said, Scottish Newcastle. Then if anybody's from the pub and restaurant industry, you will know it's a very small industry, so you tend to go around just the industry. So I was with Scottish Newcastle, doing a national role, then went to the Spirit Group, then went to the Orchid Group, then went to Green King latterly. Left there about 8 years ago now. To be fair, just thought I'm getting too old for this. I need a nice job that's 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, sitting in an office. My God, I struggled. I hated 9 till 5 sitting in an office, seeing the same people. But hey, 8 years there and I'm still there. I have a genuine passion for people, and I know everybody around the room today or around the screen today will say, yeah, we're passionate about people. I am very passionate about people. I'm fair, but I'm quite firm with people. I do treat everybody the same, whether I like them or not. You'll know if I don't like you, but I'll still treat you the same as I treat everybody else. And I just love engaging with our teams. So spent the last 8 years building teams in Continuum, and long may it continue. That's me.
Dorothy, I'm delighted to have you on the panel with all the wonderful experience and hopefully things that resonate with other people on this call here mentioned. Karen, over to you for an introduction.
Thank you, Mel. I don't think I can follow that, Dorothy. So my name's Karen Wright. I look after talent and development at Hanson. We're part of a global company called Heidelberg Cement. We have a really diverse workforce. So we are across the whole of the UK with over 350 sites, which is a good intro to some of the questions that we're going to cover later. We look after cement, aggregates. We have quarries, concrete sites, and some of our sites have 170 people on, and some of our sites have 1. So it's a real mix, which does cause us some challenges for communication. My background, I've been with Hanson for 15 years now, which started off as a chance meeting. I joined in training and development, and my role has just changed and increased and expanded. And now one of the things I look after is employee engagement and the survey. So prior to that, I'm a poacher turned gamekeeper. So I started off in operations. So I understand the other side of the coin, but obviously now I'm part of the wider HR team. There we go. Now, was that enough?
Yes, thank you very much. And I think it very much helps to hear all your backgrounds and how all these threads absolutely help us, I think, in the roles that we do when it comes to employee engagement. I think the more, I know I'm a big believer, the more that you understand about the jobs that people do on the front line, the more you can better help them when you're positioned in a central role. So it's brilliant to hear you bring that to life, both of you, in terms of your experiences. What I'm going to do is start kicking off with a couple of the questions that we have in terms of WorkBuzz, and then what we'll do is look at other questions. But I think, of course, one thing that we're really keen to understand is about understanding how you've approached employee listening. Each organisation that we work with and every organisation that we know has to adapt how it listens to employees and that employee listening strategy based on its own needs. And how do you approach employee listening in your organisation? So this could be surveys, it could be on-demand polls, it could be anything else that you do. Karen, maybe if I pose that question to you first, what's your approach at Hanson?
Thanks, Mel. Well, our approach has evolved and changed considerably over the years, but I think when we really started to pull things together and become a lot more strategic, it was when we started working with WorkBuzz. Actually, it was our first WorkBuzz survey. We used to do them internally. We decided that we wanted to engage with an external organisation who had the expertise in doing that, and we're very lucky to come across a recommendation for WorkBuzz. But I think in terms of listening, what I would say is don't only ask things or that you're actually prepared to follow up on. So I think it's really important that you focus your questions on the areas that you are able to do something about. We initially, we didn't do this, and we ended up with a massive survey of over 50 questions because everybody wanted to ask a different question. And what then happened is we got the results back again, and first of all, we were no way able to focus on such a wide group of questions and employee feedback. And some of those questions we were never going to be able to do anything about. And the knock-on impact of that is a loss of trust and belief from our employee population that we're going to act on the survey. So we had to think very, very carefully when we did our next survey on how we were going to build that trust back again. So I think, just to put it in a nutshell, it's really focus your questions to give you the answers that you are able to do something about.
Yeah. And how often do you listen at Hanson in terms of surveying?
So our formal surveys, we are now down to about every 18 months. So the reason that we do that is because if we did them any quicker, it wouldn't give us enough time to act upon them. So for us, we do our survey, we follow those up with communicating results, but also then some further focus groups to actually put some meat on the bones. That then allows us to put together our action plans. And because we're a big organisation, there are some things we can do really quickly, but there are some things that take a little bit longer. So we then have to actually act, join the dots for individuals to make sure that they understand that what they said, we've then listened and done something about, and keeping that communication going. And then we do the next survey. So it gives us long enough in between. Now, there will be some organisations that may want to work quicker, but that works for us.
Yeah, no, and I think that's critical, isn't it? It's about what works for you. And I'm a big believer in pace of change should drive your pace of listening as well. Just as you say, if you can't make those changes within 3 months, while you're asking another survey within 3 months, you're better off pacing it at the right time. Yeah. Dorothy, what do you do around employee listening at Continuum?
Again, when I first started, it was very much a spreadsheet that was sent out and everybody put their names on, and it was all very laborious. So when I joined, we got in touch with WorkBuzz through Steve, and we've started a partnership, I think, that has evolved to cater for our needs, in that at first we did one survey a year right across the business, asked everybody the same question. Then we thought, actually, a bit like what Karen said, we don't want to ask the same questions all the time because we're getting the same answers and we're not doing anything about it. So we've evolved it, and now last year we did we did two lots of surveys. So we have a huge seasonal team in Continuum. So we do 2 core surveys a year. So we do a March and an October, and they're for our core team, our permanent team, who are with us all of the time. And that works. Again, like Karen said, we have reduced the amount of questions we ask, not because we don't want to know the answers, but because I always think, don't ask the question if you don't want to know the answer. Some of the answers are still quite, oh gosh, we need to do something, but a bit different. If we can't do something, we run a campaign called You Said We Did. So we say, well, you said you wanted this, and we've done this. However, on some of them, we say, you said you wanted this, we can't do it. So we also go back and say, look, we can't do it. So next time, don't ask for it again because we can't do it because. So we always tell them why. But more importantly, last year, we ran 3 pulse surveys for our seasonal team. And we literally asked 5 questions. And it was, what was the recruitment process like? What was your onboarding like? Are colleagues talking to you? Did you get a nice welcome? Will you come back to us? And we asked that 3 times during the summer period, which is our peak trading. And what that enabled me to do this year is take those learnings and use them for the recruitment and strategy for this year. So that helped, that sort of I wasn't that bothered to how engaged they were, but I wanted to learn from the core team. From the seasonal team. The core team, I need them to be engaged. So we did it like that. And last year, we were able to change our contract with WorkBuzz. Okay, to tell everybody this, Mel. Yes. So we changed our contract with WorkBuzz, and we now have a self-service contract. So it means that we have access to the portal, we have access to all of the questions, we can analyze our results, we can get deeper into the results, I think. So it was lovely for Mel to come along in a last role and present it all, but now myself and my team are able to dig right into the detail and understand the detail more because we're doing the analysis. So we use it in different ways. So,
great. Thank you, Dorothy. That's really helpful. And I think this is it. Different strokes, different folks. We're not big believers in one size isn't what you get from WorkBuzz, and hopefully that has brought that to life with both your answers there, which is really helpful. Next question is, each of your organisations managed to improve employee engagement last year. What made you successful in doing so? Dorothy, if I come to you and look at what happened at Continuum last year, how have you managed that?
Okay, so engagement has been something that team engagement hasn't been high on the agenda for a long time. It's not the culture of the company. We're a very traditional guest-led company rather than team-led. So what I did about 2 years ago, I actually stuck it on as a management KPI. And because it was a KPI, it was linked to their bonus. And by goodness, they take ownership of it when it's linked to their bonus, let me tell you. But what I have done, the first year it was linked to a bonus, it was like, oh, Dorothy, we're never going to get that target. You're giving us that out of reach target. So this last year just gone, their KPI was, we ran a survey in March, exclude the seasonal survey because this is about the core team, ran the survey in March. Whatever their result was, I wanted them to better it in the October survey. But more importantly, it wasn't just about bettering it, because listen, I worked in some industries where you put people in a room, give them a cup of tea, and you're not coming out until you've done everything positive. But what I wanted to see more importantly was an action plan, a robust action plan on how you're going to move it. And to be fair, some of them moved it a heck of a lot, and some of them moved it 1 or 2 percentages. But what they backed it up with was their action plan, and that was the important thing. I needed to see that. And equally, from a company, from a group point of view, what I also was presented with was, I gave them a company action plan, because it's all right saying to the managers on site, you need to do this. Well, I needed to show them how I was going to support them from a company point of view. And to be fair, ours was about well-being, it was about diversity. So it was about group things that they maybe couldn't influence at site, but I was there to support that influence, and we were able to action plan that as well. So I think they bought into it very well.
Brilliant. It sounds like a perfect blend of top-down, bottom-up action planning, which is exactly what we try to achieve. But it's not always that simple, is it? And
it's not simple. It's not.
There.
Yeah.
A lot of pulling teeth.
Yes.
Karen, what did you do around last year that helped you improve engagement?
Very similar to Dorothy, actually. I think between our last survey and the one before, between the one before and the last survey, the interest and engagement from our senior team grew. Evident, they were far more bought in. I think with our CEO was relatively new when we did our last one survey, and so his influence and the areas that he's focusing on have changed the behaviours of the exec. And of course, as Dorothy said, what gets measured gets done. The people metric KPIs are more evident, and therefore if it's on the agenda, it's going to get talked about and people are going to follow up. So following the process that Dorothy also mentioned, so communicating, measuring KPIs, linking you said we did back to the survey, and keeping it on people's agendas are all very, very important. But the other thing that I think has brought the survey to life much more is using the people science team to actually take the results one step further and bring them to life. That's allowed us to focus on the actions that are going to actually give us the best results against engagement, and it also has focused our management teams in just focusing on the top 3 actions. So previously, when we did some analysis, we gave them their results and we told them the areas, or suggested the areas that they should focus on, but left them to come up with their own action planning and areas of focus. Some found it quite challenging to really understand where they should focus first, and it was either the things that were easier got done first, but they weren't necessarily going to have the biggest impact on engagement, or in the other extreme, they were overfaced, and so they either took a long time to get going, they didn't really know where to start, or they tried to do too much. So using the guidance from the people science team and really honing us down on the areas that are going to give us the biggest bang for our buck, if you like, that has allowed us to really focus down into the top 3 actions. When they're done, if we've still got time, we'll focus on the next 3. But that's made a massive difference for us.
Brilliant. What I've loved about both your responses is how different they are. Again, it just demonstrates at WorkBuzz the flexibility of the platform. The platform's there to take on the feedback and produce the results. But if you have the right in-house time, skills and expertise, and I think time's probably the critical word there, Karen, not saying that you don't have the skills and expertise, but it's time, then like Dorothy and Chelsea and the wonderful team at Continuum, you can take that forward quite easily internally. But where you're more time poor, or you might not have the right skills or experience, like we work with some clients that don't even have HR teams established yet, it's where utilising our people science, which anybody that doesn't know WorkBuzz is more of our consultancy branch at WorkBuzz here. So they're people and a bit longer in the tooth, our wonderful John Backhouse and Ian Barrow, typically with 20 years of experience each in the EX space. So that really helps take the guesswork out, exactly as you say. Because they have had the experience of going around the houses and understanding employee engagement to the nth degree. It's wonderful. Just thinking about one of the things you mentioned, Dorothy, was that you were looking at company level last year about things like wellbeing and diversity. And it's just brought to life at the moment in the macro environment. We've got a lot going on right now, haven't we? We've got cost of living crises, a potential global recession, aren't we? Climate change agendas that are burning around us, worries around terrorism and security, and so much more that's going on. What do you anticipate being your biggest challenges this year, and how do you intend to adapt? Dorothy, looks like half the answer there, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, I think, from a HR profession this year will continue to be recruitment. A recruitment of quality, attracting quality candidates. And interestingly, we have started putting in our advert. So we're looking for a more age diverse workforce, because we tend to get lots of younger people because it's seasonal work in the main. It's where people want to be. So our adverts this year, we have just started putting in engagement scores. So we've actually put in, come and work for us at Oxford Castle. The team are so engaged, they scored 85%. Oxford Castle have an 85% engagement score. It's actually 92 with there. But so we've started using engagement to attract people. And we do talk to people a lot when we're looking at our challenges about what's right for them, because I think gone are the days where you'd give somebody some money and they come to do a job. We now need to understand what people want when they come to work. So if I can just give you a couple of quick examples that we've done just tomorrow, well, actually it was yesterday, but it should have been tomorrow, but it should have been the 1st, but they all decided to do it on Monday. We've started a breakfast club. So every site, I've put some money into their budgets. They have a very basic breakfast club. Any team member can come in before shift, even on a day off, and get a basic breakfast. We were finding from feedback that some of our teams weren't able to eat, weren't able to pay the rent. They could eat, or they could. So we said, okay, what can we do? We don't want to. We're not a charity, we're a commercial business, but what can we do to help them? So I have put a very basic food offer, breakfast offer in there, and then come and have the breakfast. And that's it. And the amount of feedback we've had. One of the other things we did just pre-Christmas was we launched a hardship fund, a hardship scheme. And basically it was very confidential. If you wanted some help, not alone, if you wanted some financial help, you could email me. I then depersonalized that email, and myself and the chief executive would look at it, and we had people, you know, I'm behind with my childcare fees, but I have to reduce my hours because I have to look after the children, but that means I can't come to work. We had cars breaking down. I haven't got any money to go home for Christmas to see my family. So myself and my chief exec sit down and look at that once a week. We then, you know, decide whether it's something we can support people with. A lot of time over Christmas, I was sending £50 Tesco vouchers out, because if you can't afford your rent and you can't afford to eat, at least I can give you something towards your food. And the feedback we've had, although anonymous, although I know everybody that's done it, the feedback has been amazing. And that, I think, came from the survey results when we were analysing them, and people weren't saying, I've got no money, I need lots more money. But I think sometimes, you know, everybody wants more pay in an engagement survey, don't they? No one is paid enough. When I fill mine in, to be fair, I always say I don't get paid enough either. So so I think what happened was, when we were looking at the results, I said, what else, how can we package your employment up better than just this is your hourly rate? So now we're looking for other things to do, and that's come from the surveys.
Wow, that's amazing stuff. And I think I imagine some really difficult situations and difficult decisions around that hardship fund to be made, and those are moments that matter themselves. Like, you know, we always say that, especially in the negative times, they're the times to really support your people. And if you can with a hardship fund, that's amazing. But even things like your breakfast club, that to somebody will be everything to them, because they could afford to just about send their children to school with breakfast, or send them to a breakfast club, and were going to go in with nothing to eat themselves for work. So things like that can make a huge difference.
Massive difference.
Loaf of bread. Great, amazing stuff. Karen, what's kind of your biggest challenge for the year ahead, and what are you doing to adapt?
So I think our challenges are very similar to Dorothy's. I think there's 2 or 3 main concerns that I have. One is the candidate market, I think, is going to change. At the moment, or certainly over the last 12 months, it's very much been a candidates market. I think that is likely to change. I think we've got a fear of recession. I think organisations have already started to lay people off. That may have an impact on people staying where they are. However, I think that if they're highly disengaged, no matter how volatile the market is, they will still look elsewhere. And that links into, I think, the financial situation. People are more likely to move into other organisations for an increase, however small that increase might be. And so that, although that kind of goes against the grain in terms of, you know, potentially retention improving, I do think that the financial crisis does focus some employees' minds on, you know, even if I'm going to earn another £50 a week, that's £50 a week more towards paying my bills. So that does have an impact. And I don't think that is just at the lower paid end. I think it's right the way through. So I think the other area is well-being. So it kind of links together. So well-being is a huge subject area that covers a lot of things, and obviously we have the direct well-being support, but there's also the way that our managers understand that their actions impact on employees can affect their well-being. So it's not just about offering different services, counselling, additional financial support, which Dorothy's explained as well, but it's actually every individual understanding that they can impact the well-being of their colleagues and the people they work with. So on the back of that, I think we're working really closely to try and understand and predict from our survey results where our potential attrition problems might be. So we know that if we can track results over a number of years, we can look at the historical data and use that to predict the future. So that will help us. In addition to some of the comments, and of course comments tend to be very personal. However, some individuals are far more likely to use the comments than actually have a conversation. And I think we're reasonably well versed now at not using the comments as a witch hunt, but actually using them to actually help us, to help our managers, to help our employees better. So there's a number of things that we're doing on that front. And then in well-being, again, because the focus needs to be on well-being, we're really looking outside of the box in terms of what we need to do in addition, what we can do in addition to the sort of standard off-the-shelf, well-versed and well-used support for well-being.
Yeah. And I think that's the joy of well-being, much like individuals and much like everything. It's all very personal, isn't it? And therefore there's an element of we can give as much as we can as an organisation, but ultimately an individual needs will be different to a person sat next to them. But yeah, that's wonderful to have an array of things that you're working on and you can see making an impact.
Mel, can I just add as well? Sorry, you know what I'm like once I get started. Can I just add as well, I think one of our big challenges, which I've just been dealing with this morning, is we're coming up to peer review time. And we have two lots of payroll. We have hourly paid team and we have salary team. Obviously, the hourly paid team are going to go up at least by 10% because of the national living wage. There is an expectation, I think, from the salary team, including some of the more senior managers, that they're going to all go away with 10%. As a business, we couldn't afford that. So we've been talking this morning. I've sort of said to my directors team that let's not have individual conversations with people, because they're going to interpret things that you say to them that's going to be different to what the rest of us say. So I think a big challenge I've got coming over the next few months is to manage the expectations of people when it comes to peer review time. You know, you only have to turn the news on, don't you? And there's a strike for pay and there's another strike for pay and somebody else wants more. We're going to have to manage that. And a bit like Karen said, I think that people will, if they can get 50 pence an hour more down the road, I think they'll leave. I think the loyalty and commitment won't be there, because at the moment people are just looking for that money. And I think that's going to be a real challenge for us. Already we're seeing it in recruitment, in seasonal recruitment.
Definitely. And I think, you know, especially with the level of workers, sometimes with hourly pay, the grass is greener and they don't always see the benefits of the organisation that they're currently working for. And sometimes that's what we see, is that they leave and then they boomerang back because actually the culture was bad, or I wasn't allowed to take a break, or couldn't book the holiday I wanted, or when I was sick, my manager was actually really rude about it and didn't like the culture fit. So that's when we see things then be boomerang back to clients we work with, and hopefully that works. But I think your other point around when we're heading into these pay reviews, we're very conscious that inflation has been, 10-11%. That's unrealistic for a lot of businesses, and we're going to have to be very direct and upfront with our communications about how we're approaching pay reviews. and without creating a them and us culture, because hourly paid got the 10%, why didn't I? And how do we quash that heading in? I think that's a really good segue, Dorothy, thank you, to our next question, which is about communications. I was going to ask a question about what have you done to ensure your communications with your people is effective? And Dorothy, just thinking about, you've raised the topic, so if we come to you on that question first, and then we'll come to
Karen.
That's okay.
We use a system called Plan Day, where we do all of our scheduling and things, but it's also our communication system. Worked massively well through lockdown. I sent a note out to everybody to tell them to enjoy the breakfast this morning, to be honest, but I can send an email to any of the team or right across the businesses. They get it on an app on their phone, so we do communication like that. The GMs the general managers can also do communication via that, so that's our main tool. The other thing is we have the normal, we have a monthly edition of People News and that sort of thing. But I think it's what you communicate is important. Everybody has their own communication systems, but it's what you communicate. And I've just made myself a note there. When we look at engagement surveys and we look at results, certainly in Continuum, we've always had a tendency to say, oh, well, what can we improve? Do you know what? I think it's so important to remember to celebrate and to communicate that celebration, because it's easy to say what we're doing wrong and what can we get better. But you know what? I always say, let's start with how can we celebrate what's right? And so there's such a lot. So I don't think it's how you celebrate or how you communicate. It's what you communicate. It's one story. It's quickly. You've got to do it speedily. Even if somebody comes back and you say, we can't do that, do it quickly. Don't wait 3 months till the next survey is due. Do it quickly. Because if you don't do it quickly, you're leaving them hanging on. And I know one of the questions that we had in originally with WorkBuzz was, I believe action will be taken on this survey. And I think the first 3 years, we got sort of ridiculous, like about 12% thought they'd do some action. It was like, we are doing stuff, but what we weren't doing was telling people what we were doing and closing the gap. Yeah. So it's about celebrating it, but it's about what communication you do, not how you do it, for me.
Absolutely. And coming as an internal communicator, as my background, I can tell you, tell them once, tell them twice, they still wouldn't have heard it. So you've got to go at it again and again and again. And I think that's really important, closing that loop and also continuously closing it again and again and again. That is so important. It's great to hear that you've got a great app that works for you as well, and a great channel in Plan Day, which not everybody will probably have at the moment in terms of the right app and channels. And Karen, I know channels are probably a bit more of a challenge for your workforce. How do you ensure that your comms are effective?
I don't think we're quite there yet. It's definitely a work in progress. We have quite a few challenges in communicating to all of our employees. So we have the easy reach, which is those individuals who work in an office and sit by a computer every day, and we can easily communicate with them. The challenge for us is that we have a very dispersed workforce, and at least a third of our workforce, if not more, 40% of our workforce, don't have a company computer. So we're reliant on the communications that go directly to their home address, which may be letters. When we complete the surveys, we write out to all of our employees directly at home. We have a company magazine which goes out 4 times a year, but it's the ongoing communication that we really have challenges with. Historically, it's been a case of relying on our managers to communicate through team briefings, notice boards, posters, and so on. And of course, that's got its own challenges. So what we have been working towards, and this happened largely as a result of our previous survey, we started working with our IT department to look at how we could communicate directly with those employees who don't have their own Hanson email address. It's actually really expensive for anybody who may or may not know to set an employee up with a full suite of Microsoft email addresses. But what we've done is we have managed now to find a way where we can set all of our employees up with their own work email address, which will allow them access to all of the systems that we want them to have access to, which is absolutely fantastic. So that's been rolled out over the last 12 months. But herein lies the next problem. Our workforce is quite an aging workforce, and actually quite a lot of them don't know how to use computers. So this provides us with an additional challenge that whilst they may want to access their emails, and we've provided additional hardware on sites, so additional PCs, iPads and so on and so forth, to allow them to use their company email addresses, some of them are reliant on their managers to actually show them how to access. So we have to overcome that challenge as well. So what we've done is we've taken our early talent, and we are using our early talent who are representative across the whole workforce and predominantly site-based to actually take on the responsibility of being, I suppose, IT champions and support all of those remote workers in actually when they need to access an IT system. So we have this huge network now of more savvy, generally younger people, not always, supporting those out in the field who might need that additional help. So it's a work in progress. It's something that we're moving forward with, and I feel confident that it's, well, the other thing I suppose is it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And if I compare this to how the banks have gone online, so that has taken probably the best part of 10 years. So I keep reminding our senior management team that this is a 5-year plan. This is not going to happen overnight. So as well as those employees moving up through and being replaced by the younger workforce who are a little more tech savvy, and by training those individuals and getting them bought into using our various systems, that will all go to helping us to improve our communication to and from the workforce as well. So as I say, it's a long-term aspiration.
That's wonderful, and I love that. It's almost a reverse mentoring approach that you're using within the workforce, and you know, there's benefits around upskilling people, but also that diversity element and connecting people across age ranges, which sometimes is missing if we're speaking frankly and openly in the workforce. There becomes a bit of a them and us culture about the young boys on site, and you know, what are they up to? Great, that is amazing. That leads quite nicely onto another question that I had for you, which is about, have you got a story that you can share about how you've created or even had your own as an individual moment that mattered from your work on employee engagement? Karen, is there anything that you can call out, that a moment that mattered to you through your journey in terms of employee engagement?
I have a great example of something that made a massive difference to me, and I think it's made a difference to them as well. So we have one of our senior managers who is he's a professional and very task driven, and so he manages his delivery on how many pieces of work that him and his team produce. He had, so as part of the survey communication, we work with the senior team, we go through their results with them, we answer any questions, we help them to focus on how they're going to communicate onwards and what they're going to do next. And this particular manager had avoided or not shown up to a number of meetings that were set up with them. Eventually, probably because our CEO had set up a meeting with him to ask him about what he was doing with his survey action plan, he contacted me and asked me if I would go through his results with him. But he made it very clear that he was doing it under duress, and he didn't have time or the bandwidth to really focus on this. So in response to that, I said, well, let me take you through your results, but perhaps you'd like to raise your issues with the CEO as to why you don't think employee engagement is really important, and then you can have a discussion with him. But let me just take you through your results, and then at least you'll be able to talk knowledgeably to the CEO about where you are and what you're doing. So the conversation started off, and I thought, God, here we go. This is not going to be a fun conversation. But actually, once we started talking through the results, once the results started to resonate with his team, some of the challenges he was having, he became really animated and started to link the results to things that he was experiencing. And he became really, really engaged, so much so that by the end of the discussion, he'd also formulated an action plan, and he was going to link the results not through not through targeting anybody in particular, but the results could resonate with some of the problems one of his managers were having with their team and cross-team silo working. And so he was going to use that as part of the PDR discussion, the appraisal discussion, with a way to actually open up the channel for conversation, and therefore come up with a resolution with that manager on how that manager was going to help to improve some of the issues that were raised in the survey. So we went full circle, and for me that was amazing, absolutely amazing, sort of complete change in direction, and that made me feel that I was doing a really good job too, because I had been able to facilitate that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's very much an aha moment, really opening somebody's eyes and then realizing, seeing it for the first time, and the true value. And I think that, as you know, a professional, demonstrates your buy-in and your ability to turn that person as well, which is fantastic. It's an amazing story. Thank you, Karen. I think something that a lot of our listeners will be wanting to replicate within their own organisations. Have you got a moment that you can share from your work?
I'm going to jump on the back of Karen's, but just to show you that I did it in exactly the opposite way. So I had an operator who was a senior guy, lots of reports, and if it can't fit in a box, he doesn't necessarily want it to do anything. So he doesn't do the softer skills. Very good operator, but everything has to be on a template. Everything has to be in a box. Didn't see the point of engagement at all, of employee engagement at all. And I tried for a year. And then those of people that know you or know me, or who sort of got to know me on this call, I'm not the most patient of people. So the next year I got all the GM, the general managers together, everybody, all the stakeholders together to do the presentation, and I didn't invite him. And he was like, well, why are you having meetings with all of the general managers? I said, well, it's just engagement. You're not interested. Doesn't matter. Don't turn up. Oh, well, I'll come in case you talk about other things. So he came and very quickly turned the discussion to other things, like operating, like health and safety, like this process, that process. So the next year I didn't invite him, and I wouldn't let him come. I said, you're not coming. I said, you disrupt my meetings, you're not coming, you're not interested, don't bother. This year, not only did he want to come, he wanted to arrange the meeting. He wanted me to go through all the presentations prior to the meeting, so he understood what the key issues were. So where Karen has a lot more patience than me, I just said, oh, don't bother coming. Just don't bother coming. You disrupt me, you're not interested. I'm not wasting your time. So I don't, but I know he is that sort of character that would rise to that challenge. So so I done it that way, and that actually didn't make a big difference. And funny enough, we're setting KPIs tomorrow, and he was like, Dorothy, what you doing on engagement this year? Why? It's got nothing to do with you. It's not in a template. So so yes, I've turned him round, but in a very different, just you get on with your process and I'll get on with mine.
Yeah, no, that's really powerful, and it demonstrates, I think, and everybody listening will know the importance of managing your stakeholders around the table. And I think this goes back to a couple of other things you've mentioned, like when you've got 50 questions, it's because you've got stakeholders throwing things in at you, and almost you've got to take different approaches for different people. You know, it's a huge part of managing people in a decent way when they are stakeholders around the table. And you know, where Karen had to man-mark this senior leader and spend that one-to-one time with him, almost as well, Dorothy, the same for a similar situation, almost the same outcome, what we're looking for, which is people to engage with it. Excluding someone sometimes also works if they're a sunshine yellow person that likes to be involved in everything. Yeah. So yeah, really interesting, like almost similar outcomes, but how you got there completely opposite as to that methodology. Right, I'm going to ask a killer question and ask everybody to please do raise your questions in the QA, but the killer question around today has been, I've already written down about 6 full-on tips about improving engagement in 2023, which I can recap. But if you had one top tip that you could tell everybody on this call to improve engagement for 2023, you should do this, what would it be? Dorothy, what's your top tip?
My top tip is, if you're new to doing team surveys, don't do too many. Yeah. Because it's I'm starting to do more regular ones, but for different reasons. If you are starting out, just be careful that you're not too enthusiastic, because your team will get survey fatigue and they will get sick of answering them. And talk to them, talk to people and tell them why you can't do something if you can't. That's 2 tips, but I'll not charge you for the extra.
You anyway, yeah, I know holding you to one would be near impossible. It's all right. Karen, over to you. What's your top tip?
I think my top tip is it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and therefore remember it's an ongoing process. You won't be able to do everything all the time, and I think on the following the survey, act quickly. So I think it's really important for employees to see that you've listened and you've taken action. So even if it's small quick wins that you can get across really, really quickly, and then communicate them widely. So as Dorothy said, you said we did, join the dots for them and let them see that you've listened and you've taken action.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I think that was a big encompassing top tip as well, which is fantastic. A lot of the points that I've had written down are all covered by you both. Just looking at if there's any questions from our wonderful audience. Thank you, Julianne, for the comment. Lovely examples, Karen and Dorothy, and quite insightful. I absolutely agree. Really, really helpful discussion. And I think, you know, Dorothy and Karen have a wealth of experience between them, and as individuals that I'm sure I could ask them questions for days gone by and still be talking to them. If there's any other questions, then please do post them in the Q&A. But what I'll just do is use these 5 minutes to kind of wrap up and say a huge thank you, Karen and Dorothy. If anybody has any other questions, I'm sure following the webinar, we will absolutely, be sending the recording for your reference, Fatima, but also if anybody's got any other questions that you want us to answer offline, then please send them through to us. We can pick them up. In terms of what will be happening following this webinar is we will be, you can discover more on our website, and there's a couple of really helpful ebooks that we already have on the website that you can utilize. I think there's the State of Employee Engagement. If you haven't already looked at it from last year, then please do, where we surveyed hundreds of HR professionals about what their thoughts were about employee engagement coming into this year. And we also have an ebook about a metrics framework around employee engagement and experience, which can be a really good place to start for anybody that's starting to pick up data together. And we have something coming soon, and I believe this is actually going to be released this week, which is about employee engagement in challenging times, a guide to navigating the recession and cost of living crisis. We're speaking to a lot of clients, a lot of people out there that are struggling with this. So we'll have a new resource available very shortly, and that will also be culminating in a webinar. But if you've been registered for this and you attended this webinar, you will absolutely receive the recording, an overview of these key points we've discussed, with a few more, frankly, than 5 top tips. I've got loads more in my book that I've written down, and I'm sure there'll be even more that I can pull out if I re-listen to this, and an invite to our next webinar and ebook. That email will come from one of our team members, Emily or Fiona, so look out for personal emails. And if you want to have a chat with us ever at WorkBuzz, then please just get in contact at hello@workbuzz.com. Now, finally, I think we do have a lovely question as well. Thank you, Julianne. How have you dealt with reluctance from management, budget-wise, time-wise, etc., for different initiatives to increase engagement or change internal processes? That is quite a big question as well. Okay. Anybody want to get a first bite on that, Dorothy or Karen?
Buy-in, as I said at the beginning, we linked it to their KPIs. We have a competitive team of managers, and they all want to be the best. So we linked it to their performance, which in turn linked to bonus. But we got them bought in by saying, you've got to prove you're able to do this.
I think one thing I'd add to that is sell the benefits. I think it's really important to think back to why you're doing it. So, you know, obviously, most of us are with organisations that are here to make money or deliver something. So we know that an engaged workforce has lots of benefits, including better performance. And so going back to reminding them or highlighting all of that good stuff to get them to buy into why measuring engagement is important, and just highlight that that's just the starting point. Because I think the other thing which sort of links back to a top tip, I suppose, is the employee engagement survey is the tip of the iceberg. It's just the first part of the process. And actually, in terms of focus, I would say 25% of your focus is on getting the survey completed, but 75% of your focus is actually reviewing and actioning the results. And I think that's really important. When we first did our survey, we got it wrong. We got it the other way around. We spent so much time focusing on actually getting the survey that we didn't spend enough time or we hadn't done enough planning on doing the actioning. But I think overcoming managers' reluctance is about getting them bought into the benefits, what's in it for them.
Yeah. And I think as well, Karen, is one of the other things is getting them to buy in, but making sure that when you present them with the results, they don't go into defensive mode. And as a HR person or someone who is facilitating those results, that analysis, you're there to support them. So it's no good banging on and saying, well, this happened, or the team have said this, and then managers then defending it. Well, I can't have said that because I always do this. So it's that communication of the results and the fact that we're there to learn. It's not a stick, because a lot of managers will go into defense mode if you're quite new to it, and think, well, that doesn't happen on my side. Well, it does, because they're telling you. So you've got to be quite supportive, I think, when managers are being presented with something about their own side. Sometimes it's uncomfortable for them.
Yeah, and just to go back again, it's not a sprint. So if not everybody is bought in the first time round, don't focus on them, focus on the people that are bought in, and let them, through peer pressure, hopefully bring everybody else with them as well.
Brilliant. Really helpful answers there. Thank you both. And I think ultimately KPIs, if we can demonstrate, like I think posted in the background, shows everything. And if you want to look at a couple of our case studies, Julianne, I'd recommend, because there's KPIs that are underlying that a leader will want to hit, that they may not associate can be influenced by employee engagement, because we're seen as the fluffy side of it, but we do drive business results. So that would be important to share. Right, I'm very conscious we are 1 minute overrun, but thank you all very much for your time. We will leave you there and say goodbye for now. And thank you again, Karen and Dorothy, for sharing your insights and experience. It's hugely appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.